Hi, I'm Linda Reeb and welcome to Mums Mentoring. Our session today is titled Your Life Story. I used to think that this would not be something that would apply to mothers of young children who were just starting out in a marriage and starting out in a family. And then I spent some time chatting with moms and I realized, whoa, it so applies. So this one is maybe more about personal growth than it is about marriage or parenting. But it's interesting because when you think about your life story, I want you to think about it in terms of a book. Remember when you were a kid and you'd start a book and it would say, Once Upon a Time. I loved that. Once upon a time. So imagine, put your name in there. Once upon a time, there was a girl named Julia. There was a girl named Cynthia. There was a girl named Betsy Joe. Whatever it might be. And think about the chapters in the book of your life so far. If you had to sit down and think about your life and label all the chapters, what would those chapters be called? That's actually a fun thing to do with some friends. Write your chapter headings of your book of life. And what are the themes that God has woven into your life so far? As I've spent time chatting with moms, I realized, whoa, these girls have lived interesting lives. They may be young, but man, they've had boatloads of stuff happen. Good, bad, ugly, the whole gamut. And I got thinking about it and I realized, you know what? The past experiences, the things you have gone through in your own life so far, the themes God has woven into your life, that's the you that you bring to your role as wife and mother. So while this isn't a marriage or a parenting topic per se, it so applies because who you are is the wife that you are and the mother that you are, and all those things are a piece of that puzzle. So let's unpack that a little bit today. We want to look at when you examine the themes in your life, where are areas where you sense that you need to heal? Maybe there's some chapters that need to be about, I need to grow in certain areas. There's some things I don't know. I could benefit from loading some tools into my toolbox and growing in my role as wife and mother. And then sometimes you've been through really painful experiences, and that will help create empathy and connection with others who've experienced like things, and God can put all of those themes to work in your life as well. And then sometimes we just need to celebrate, and we forget to do that sometimes. Some of our chapters are like, best season ever. A season of wins. I got married. I had this beautiful baby. We were able to afford a home. Did any of those things get really celebrated at a deep level with you and God? So let's unpack that a little bit. Your past chapters, the hard ones and the easy ones, have shaped you for sure. And you can think about your own life and see those themes emerging and bubbling to the surface, can't you? The happy chapters of your book contain elements of celebration. The sad chapters, they're going to activate your heart and they're going to help create empathy and connection with other people who are going through similar things. God doesn't change the sad chapters in our book, but He can transform them and He can bring good out of hard times. He brings beauty from ashes. God is the ultimate recycler. That's what He does. So when we've had painful things in our lives, maybe painful chapters that have come down through multiple generations, we can take those to God and we can heal and we can grow and we can celebrate what He's going to do in the future. Maybe you say, here's a line in the sand. I'm not passing these generational sins down to the next generation. This stops with me. I'm going to learn new ways of doing and being. I'm going to heal from the abuse and the dysfunction that has been part of my family's story for generations going back. Now, as Jesus followers, we are going to draw a line in the sand and say, there's not going to be more of this. We're going to go a different way. And I've seen that happen in my mom's life. She wasn't raised in a Christian family. And so when she came to know the Lord, and as she and my dad established their marriage and started welcoming us 3 girls into the family as babies and raised us, she chose some new ways of thinking, some new attitudes based on the Bible that served her well in going in a different direction, a Christian biblical direction that she was not familiar with from her childhood. God took her on a new path, and it turned out to be a blessing to her, a blessing to my dad, and a blessing to us children as well. So let's look at some questions for discussion. What are some of the headings in your book so far? What recurring themes do you see? And after this video, I hope you can talk with your spouse about this, talk with friends about it, or just pause the video and talk about that and then carry back on. Where have you seen God redeem some hard parts of your story? And when that was happening, was he redeeming circumstances or was he redeeming heart attitudes? Sometimes we see God working through events, and sometimes he works in an area of our heart and changes our attitudes, changes our perspectives, how we view things. So think about healing. I had a friend that came to Mom's Mentoring, and she said to me, she said, I don't feel at home in my own life. She said, the life I have now is the life I want, and it's good. But she said, I grew up in a family that was so dysfunctional. And she went on to describe to me some of what it was, hair-raising stuff, Jerry Springer kind of stuff. And she said, as much as that life is wrong and was not helpful and is totally dysfunctional, that was my normal. And so she said, I feel comfortable in that life. I know how to manage that life. I know how to exist in that framework. Whereas my current life now, even though it's good and it's what I want and it's healthy, she said, it's taking me some time to transition into feeling at home in this new life. And that was an eye-opener for me. One of the chapters in her book, of course, would be, my childhood was bizarrely dysfunctional. Well, there's that. So what is she going to do? Just say, oh, sucks to be me. No, God is in the business of healing and growing. And as she cooperates with him and works through that transition and doesn't give up and perseveres, will her life be a rich tapestry of blessing to herself, to her family, to people that she interacts with for the rest of her days? Rhetorical question. Yes, of course. And he can do that in each of our lives. It will be a benefit to your children if you can stop dysfunction from continuing on down the line. None of us are going to have perfect families and perfect lives. It's not about that. But as we choose to align ourselves with biblical teaching, biblical encouragement, an honest, open relationship with Jesus that just affects our day-to-day living, changes happen, changes come, changes for the good. God is in the business of healing and growing and celebrating, and he just comes right alongside us as we write the chapters in our book that are happening now, and as we think about future chapters in our lives, not just the past. So it is a benefit to your kids, and don't be afraid to go to a counselor and get help with that. Sometimes, like my friend experienced, her story was so over the top that it would take some real dedicated, professional, caring Christian counselors to help her walk through all of that and take her through that transition. Sometimes we need a buddy to go through stuff with us that's hard. So don't be afraid to do that. It will be a blessing to you and to your children as well. And then growing. So learning the why behind the what. When you find yourself reacting in a certain way and you come away scratching your head, just like, what on earth? Why do I blow up when that happens? How come when my husband has a slight critical tone to his voice, I just go ballistic? Get curious about your life, about your emotions. Get compassionate, care enough about yourself to explore the why behind the what and grow in those areas. I think of Joyce Myers and her books. She was a pretty snarky lady back in the day. And when you read her books, you find out some of the why behind the what of all that snarkiness. She'd be the first to admit it. And she has gone on a journey of healing and of growth to learn new ways of thinking about herself, her identity in Christ, new ways of using her tongue and allowing her speech to get transformed, new behaviors. And it is something she'll work on for the rest of her life, as we all will. But it's been really cool to see how God has redeemed some hard things in her life and then allows her, with her TV speaking ministry and the books she's written, to bless tons of people's lives. So that's the encouraging part. Growing can be something that helps us learn forgiveness for other people, develops empathy, and there's just so many positive side effects to it. So don't be afraid to grow. Onboard those tools. Sometimes even basic things like understanding strengths, understanding your Myers-Briggs, knowing your husband's love language, All those things are helpful tools. And so be willing to grow. And I know as moms, you're busy. You don't have time to sit down and read endless books. So get creative. Onboard a podcast. You're riding in the car, the baby's asleep. Use that time. If there's an area of your life, you've read a chapter in your book and you say, whoo, I need to grow in this area. I don't really know what it looks like to grow a strong marriage. All the marriages I've been part of and seen modeled in front of me were marriages that fell apart. And so I don't really know what that looks like. So that can be a time when you just are intentional, maybe when you're out for a run, that you're listening to a podcast like Tim Keller's Cultivating a Healthy Marriage podcast, and onboard that tool to help you in your own life. I would just encourage you to take that seriously. Celebrating creates a thankful heart, joy, a hopeful attitude for the future. See the good. It just is a mood lifter, isn't it? And sometimes we forget to celebrate, and it can be a big celebration. We've had a couple in our family where we got the whole clan together, grandpa, grandma, aunts and uncles, cousins. We just had a couple of days of just sheer fun and good times together. We celebrated 80th birthday parties and weddings, all kinds of fun things. And you guys know how fun that is and how healthy that is to do. And to bring God into the middle of that and to just take a time to say, good job, God. Way to go. We are celebrating. There's lots of things on earth that are hard and tough and sad and make us, our shoulders sag and all of that. But there are times to just celebrate and let her rip, right? And God smiles on that. And then there's the small celebrations where you think, oh, there's not much out of the ordinary happening today, but maybe you can find a couple of flowers that you can pick and stick in a vase and put by your kitchen sink and just let that be a little celebration of saying, oh my goodness, look at the stamens and pistils in this flower. And, you know, I like flowers. I guess you can tell that, but don't forget to celebrate the little small things too. And I know I see your pictures on Facebook of your sweet babies, and I know you're reveling in that smooth butter skin and those little dimpled fingers and the squishy thighs and just all the sweetness of a baby. And isn't that fun to just revel and celebrate in this little person that God has blessed you with? So, and then end of day prayers of gratitude. You know, maybe it's been a hard day with rebellious preschoolers and a lot of discipline issues or whatever, but just try to get in the habit of falling into bed at night and saying, thank you, God, and just finding a few things that you can really be thankful for, because gratitude and thankfulness just open up doors for celebrating in like nothing else. So let me just mention about husbands and then ask a couple of questions and we'll wrap up. Your husband's communication style, when you think about the stories in his book, what would his book be called? What would the chapter titles be in his book? What stories from his background have shaped how he communicates and how he interacts with you as his wife and with his children? If he tends to lash out under pressure or withdraw during conflict, a conversation to understand the why behind the what of that can be helpful. I was speaking with a friend last year, and she said that she had a conversation with her husband's stepsister. And in that conversation, the stepsister shared that as a boy, her husband had been deeply affected by the father's unkind words. And he had been emotionally abusive to his son. And my friend said that when she heard that story, it was like a light bulb came on. And she finally understood, aha, that's why when I say something that to me just seems like a suggestion, he takes it as a criticism. He's hypersensitive to anything that sounds like I'm putting him down or dissing him in any way. And so it was really helpful for her to get that story from his stepsister, and it gave her a different perspective, and she started getting creative about ideas for going forward and how they could both grow and build a stronger marriage in that area. So another way you can celebrate is just think about your husband and come up with a good chapter for his book. Create a story that celebrates him. So often when we're with another couple, it's easy to tell them something stupid that your husband did. It's like, oh, Greg tried to hang a painting and, well, we had a lot of holes in the wall, let's just say, by the time that thing finally got hung. And it's just so easy to tell those kinds of stories. But what would it look like to share a story with your friends that celebrates your husband? Something that he does, big or small, and just makes him a bit of a hero. He might say, one chapter in his book is, my wife thinks I'm a hero. That's not a bad chapter to have, right? Okay, discussion questions. What questions can you ask your husband that will encourage him to open up about his stories? Sometimes stories from the past can be hard to share. Are his stories safe with you? Can he get your listening ears long enough to get through a whole story with your full attention and care? There's a book by Dan Allender called To Be Told. And in that book, he talks about the themes God has woven into our lives and how God encourages us to co-author our stories going forward. We have agency about how we respond to what's happened so far in our lives. So a chapter in my book right now could be, I'm ticked off about all the crap that happened to me back in the day. And that's what I'm living right now. And I don't trust God, and I'm kind of mad at him, and cheesed off. That could be a chapter of my book right now. Or my chapter could be titled, well, it's hard to dig into the painful stuff that happened to me in the past. I am screwing up my courage and taking steps forward to do just that. That's a long title for a chapter, but you get what I'm saying. We can co-author our stories. We have agency about how we respond to what has happened so far in the stories of our lives. Will I be pliable in the hands of God going forward? That's a good question. Will I allow him to shape and reshape me through the difficulties that I encounter, the hard chapters in my book? Will I choose to grow and learn in the future to bless my marriage and family? Or am I kind of closed down to those options? It is what it is, just a stoical, fatalistic attitude to what the chapters are in your book so far. So let me just encourage you, grow, heal, celebrate. In big or small ways, celebrate the blessings that God has brought so far to your life and your life story.